Hi, this is Mike Easley, author of The Antics. Today is the last in my video series on emotions, well, at least for a while. And today I wanted to talk to you about how love goes wrong. How can we go from a relationship that and we feel is like the best relationship ever, one that we are experiencing this great, wonderful feeling of love and feels like we found our soulmate, the person that the universe has intended for us to be with. And then something begins to happen, and that relationship becomes more difficult and dysfunctional. What's happening with our emotions? How does this work? How can somebody hijack our emotions? How can we let that happen? So here, I want to use our tool for understanding emotions to talk a little bit about gaslighting and relationship dysfunction and how that takes love and twists it around. So, in a functioning relationship, this concept of love, which is a combination of these emotions here: joy, trust, admiration, ecstasy, serenity, and acceptance. What happens when that relationship becomes dysfunctional? What happens to our emotions, and how can we pull ourselves back from this? How can we shift ourselves back into that loving relationship, or perhaps use our emotions to tell us it's time to make a change? So here we are in this sector of the wheel of emotions where love exists as this combination of other emotions. And these are very positive. What can happen in a dysfunctional relationship is when terror, fear, and apprehension begin to come in. And this can be caused by somebody who is abusive to us, emotionally abusive, physically abusive, but even that emotional and and mental abuse that we can experience in relationships, where trust becomes replaced with fear, acceptance becomes replaced with apprehension, and the next thing we know, our love has been hijacked. And you might wonder, well, what is it that keeps us in this relationship if acceptance and trust have been, taken out and replaced by fear and apprehension through gaslighting, through emotional abuse, through physical abuse? Well, one of the things that happens is we find ourselves getting love bombed, and this is where our partner will turn up things and create this feeling of ecstasy. And what happens is when we experience love bombing, this becomes such a great feeling that it really overrides overrides and substitutes these acceptance and trust and admiration, counteracting the apprehension, fear in our relationships. And we tend to find ourselves in this really crazy roller coaster ride between what we would like to have experience love here. What happens is we find ourselves in this really terrible mix of love and submission, and this tug of war that happens in our hearts and in our minds as we experience, gaslighting and emotional and physical and mental abuse. So, if we understand what's going on, if we can understand how our trust gets hijacked by fear, our acceptance gets hijacked by apprehension, and we understand what's going on inside of our bodies because we are able to actually feel these feelings again and understand what's happening, we can recognize that our relationship has become dysfunctional and our love has been hijacked and mixed with submission, which creates this very unhealthy relationship dysfunction. So, that is a bit of an explanation of how our emotions can be turned against us and why it is so important to really understand your emotions, understand how those emotions mix to create love, but also how that feeling of love can be hijacked into this feeling of submission, which puts us in this crazy making dysfunctional relationship. We can use knowledge of our emotions to help guide us and keep us in relationships that are healthy and avoid those relationships that are not.